Hi everyone. Today my guest is Plamen Nikolov. He's Bulgarian. He's living in Copenhagen, Denmark at the moment. He has finished his studies on organizational innovations and entrepreneurship at Copenhagen Business School. He has worked and volunteered for organizations in different countries. Plamen is a constant traveler and a unique personality with a lot of interesting experiences to share. And this is a special edition. We call it the Stories from the Backpack, India edition. And it is my pleasure to invite Plamen to this channel. Plamen, now it's your time to give us a short introduction about you.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for having me over the channel. So a few words about myself. I was, originally Bulgarian. I was born and raised in Bulgaria. I used to study logistics back home. And then eventually, after a few exchanges, academic exchanges to different countries, I found out about like some opportunities of studying in Denmark. And there I was. I moved to Denmark, where I have been living for the past about 7-8 years.
Okay.
With some interruptions. Yeah. And I studied organization innovations and entrepreneurship at CBS, Copenhagen Business School. And eventually I went and worked and traveled in South America doing related projects. Then I came back. I decided to write finish my thesis, master thesis. Then I went to India to actually collect some data in regards to my master thesis, something that probably we're going to talk about today.
Yep. Sure.
And then I came back, graduated, and started my own project.
Okay. So what is this vegan culinary project?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was talking about. Vegan Culinary started as a project which was aiming at offering culinary experiences to the audience in Copenhagen.
Mm-hmm.
And the way it worked in the beginning was that I decided, well, I had some skills within the culinary field, and I wanted to show the people how that, what I can do for them. So I decided to, at some point I decided to gather a few people, say create an event where I'll announce that there will be 4 dishes. All dishes would be vegan, and they will be on one theme. For instance, Indian cuisine, like Southern Indian cuisine or Northern Indian cuisine. And then I'll just release the tickets, and people can buy, can book and visit with different groups can come, or participants can mix. So that's also part of the experience, hearing the stories about the food, experiencing the food, but also meeting other people. So that's how it started. It started from the premise that I want to offer plant-based cuisine to people, and I wanted to raise more awareness about the beauty of plant-based cuisine, taste-wise, environmentally, and so on. And it started from my own kitchen, actually. I was inviting people to my own apartment.
Okay.
I used to live in a, top apartment, which was, had beautiful kitchen with the windows allowing for a lot of light to come in. And that was the kind of like experimental part of the project, where I wanted to see if somebody's going to book and come to my apartment. And it turned out actually there's a lot of interesting people who came, a lot of people who I would never expect. One time I had a group of professors who decided to challenge themselves and come to my event. It was Turkish cuisine that evening, and it was a unique experience. I never thought that's going to ever happen, but actually it did, and they were very happy with the food. So then I went out. I went to a culture house, and I negotiated a space where I could actually host my events in 2018.
Okay.
And there on, I just expanded. I went from just having experience events to hosting workshops where I was teaching people how to cook. And eventually started expanding and also in catering. For instance, I was catering for the Copenhagen Jazz Festival in 2018, which was a big event.
Wow, that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And that's a few words about vegan culinary.
Tell us a bit more about veganism.
Veganism, yeah. I think, veganism has different levels to it. It has the personal one, it has the, the global one. When you're talking about the personal one, that, of course we all start from that, point, is, for me, obviously the ethical side is important, how our food is being sourced is, whether like it's being like ethically sourced or not. And then the environmental side, of course, it's also really important. Like how much does actually the production of our food pollute or contribute to the development of the environment. And that's where I started in 2013. I started as being a vegetarian, and eventually I decided that that's not necessarily enough, that I can actually reduce milk, dairy products and eggs, for instance. And actually, well, I took it step by step, and I decided to challenge myself and say, hey, like you've been vegetarian for 5-6 years in 2017, but so for 4 years. So why don't you try for a month being, plant-based? And I tried it for a month. I was traveling in Iran, which is actually challenging to find plant-based food. But I felt okay, like I had a great time, and I felt like I have the energy. Why don't I challenge myself, right now? So I did, and it worked out.
Tell us your experiences working with different nationalities.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, like most of the time, I've been working with different nationalities. I moved away from my home country, Bulgaria, when I was 21.
Okay.
So everything, that's been like 11 years back. Everything since then has been working with different nationalities. And in the beginning it's challenging. Obviously, we are put in these kind of conditions, say, we all may be, foreigners in the country. So we're already put in this context that we have to deal with the environment. But then once we start connecting to each other, we notice that we do have different perspectives depending on where we come from. And that's an interesting process of getting, kind of like being careful about not stepping on somebody's feet, but also being quick enough to kind of like negotiate the differences and move on for the purpose of being, providing some efficiency in the process.
Yeah. Okay.
So, like for instance, I can say that I've been in the beginning. I used to team up with a lot of Danes when I had colleagues at CBS, working on student projects. That of course, like it always like there are always some differences about like how long or short should be the process. Like in terms of like expectations, I think there's like some differences. As in the Danes wanted to negotiate, or the Danes or like general like foreigners, like the negotiation process used to be very long in that sense. Everything had to be agreed upon. Whereas like some other foreigners coming from different cultures, we thought, okay, well maybe we don't need to really spend that much time on thinking about that because we seem to agree, all of us. So that was interesting. That was an interesting beginning.
Experience from many of the expats is that the Danes are not friendly, very reserved.
I wouldn't say. I mean, from my experience, I wouldn't say that there's definitely some reservedness in communication with other cultures, but I think they try to be as friendly as possible without necessarily investing too much time in a connection with a foreigner. Because the way it's a small country and they try to be kind of like defensive, or they try to be protective of their culture and language. And in a sense that's being developed by keeping to themselves. Like if you get a big wave of, say migrants from different parts of the world, of course they'll feel threatened and try to preserve their culture, like, keeping themselves to themselves.
Yeah, understandable. So how many countries have you traveled so far? Which of them is the most challenging?
Challenging. Okay. I mean, in terms of count, I don't keep an exact count. It must be around like 45, 50 countries.
Oh.
Yeah, I've been around most of Europe. I've been to South America, Asia, some parts of Asia. Then I've been to some parts of Africa as well. But challenging country. I mean, well, I can say India. I mean, it won't be like, won't be difficult to make that bet.
Okay.
I think, yeah, like some parts, like, well, for sure some, I think actually India wasn't necessarily such a challenge. It's because of the experience I had by that point, because I had already traveled for quite some time to, throughout South America and Central America. So I had some experience with different cultures. So even though India even more different than the West, than say Latin cultures, I think I still managed pretty well because I had experience. But coming back to your question, I think actually probably Bolivia was very complicated.
Okay.
It was complicated because of, I mean, to start with, I think like I met many beautiful people in Bolivia, and I had great experiences, and many people were super welcoming. But I also, like, by the time I was in Bolivia, there's this how they say, like, a conflict between the U.S. and the Bolivian leader. So many people who I met, they thought that I'm American just because I'm, by my skin color or by the way I talk, they thought that I was American. And there's a good deal of prejudice. Sometimes there's like some comments about me that I thought were like inappropriate. Um, but yeah, in that sense, that was like, some complication connecting with some people. But in general, as I said, also a very beautiful country. And
Yeah. So this session we focus more on India. So what was your motivation to travel and explore India?
I think, I mean, India, it's definitely, I mean, it's always been on my radar. Like, in a sense that, like, it's always like, many people talk about it. I've been listening to, travelers in, stories, for the past, like 40, 50 years of people from the West coming to India and looking for kind of to reconcile with themselves, looking for peace. And I guess that kind of like, contributed to the mysticism of India, that was constructed within my head.
Yeah.
And then at some point I noticed that I was very interested in social entrepreneurship. I took a few courses at the university, and then when I had to write my thesis, I decided to write my thesis and focus on social entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And India happens to be a kind of like a hive of social entrepreneurship. There are many projects happening in India regarding that. There's a lot of opportunities, a lot of challenges, so people are rising up to the challenge. And eventually I decided to I just decided to do research to gather some data for my thesis in India. That was my starting point. And then, of course, associated with that, I had the idea of like, having a few days here and a few days there, traveling and getting to know the people, food, culture, traditions. And which of course was naive, because like in a few days or in a few months, you still don't understand anything, like happening. It's just, yeah, it's complicated and it's beautiful, and it's in a way.
So when you hear the word India, what comes to your mind?
I think we kind of like say, I mean, the first word, like, would be chaos.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that would be one thing. And then after that it comes like, yeah, but it's negotiated chaos. Like, many times you won't have, like, people won't be following any rules on the road, like any explicit rules, like signs or traffic lights.
Yeah.
But they're still following the rule of being kind of aware of what's happening and kind of like negotiating second to second basis. Yeah. Everything. So that's what comes. That's my first word. Like, it's organic, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, could you share some of your cultural shocks in India? Go ahead, Manoj.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's gonna take a whole day probably to go through all of it. I mean, definitely. I mean, I don't come from, I'm not German. I'm, Bulgarian. So I think Bulgaria is kind of like, it's kind of like almost in the middle between, like perfectly Western countries and countries like India, or like, or maybe the Middle East. So, I was extremely shocked by seeing anything, but I think just the sheer number was something that was very, like, shocking. For instance, there's like a lot of people I noticed that are just like in Delhi. Delhi was a prime example of that. A large number of people were sleeping on the street. And that was something that was kind of like, I mean, people were just like, during the day I'll be walking around and I'll see the mattresses and duvets and blankets. And then during the night, if I pass through, like just next to that place again, I'll notice how people are coming back from work and just, sleeping on these spots. So we do have homeless people in Bulgaria as well, but it's just like when I heard that there's like, probably a few 100,000 people doing that in Delhi, I was like, wow, that's a big number for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I think definitely the numbers was something, that, just the scale, the magnitude in India. It's very stunning. Like another thing that was very like surprising is that I think at some point I heard that there's like about like 35,000 people competing for one spot in the university, like for a public school.
Yeah.
And that's just like astounding. I mean, it was really difficult. And again, I mean, all these challenges are kind of like creating the conditions for creative minds or creative solutions. And I've seen that myself with how people. One thing that was really like personal story that I can tell was seeing how people, say, grocery shop owners would close the store after the day is done at 7-8 o'clock. Whenever they decide that they're done, they'll close and they go teach kids under a bridge. They'll create this like improvised school and teach kids math or like whatever knowledge they had or they thought was like relevant. So that's something that will never happen in other places, or I feel like I haven't seen it anywhere else happening, which is beautiful because the challenging times are creating space for creative solutions.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
India is a big country and it's extremely diverse. How was your experience compared to many other countries you visited?
I mean, one difference let's start with food because that's always like a subject that we love talking about. When it came to food, I noticed that there's a big difference in terms of, say, the staple. I think like the staple ingredient in the south is rice, definitely. And rice is also a big thing in the north, but also like wheat, it's also a big one. And that also you can see that in all the dishes, like we're very well expressed. I mean, something that I love, I'm now you're gonna ask me about my favorite food at some point in India, and something that I really love. There's many dishes that I love, but like one of them is definitely dosa. I mean, that's something like it's a beautiful dish.
Okay.
And for the ones who don't know what a dosa is, that's pretty much so it's a pancake, like a crepe, really thin, made from rice and lentils.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
but I think
it's true. I have a lot of German friends who are now a big fan of dosas.
Yeah. It's becoming a big thing. So I mean, southern cuisine was also. I was vegetarian at that point when I was in India. So I ate dairy products, but still I did enjoy much more the southern cuisine because I thought it was lighter and there's like a lot more like plant-based, like a lot more like lentil-based, a lot more coconut-based food, and I mean that's definitely one of my favorite cuisines in the world. The northern cuisine also was like was good, but it was definitely heavier. You can see that you're using like it's a bit more oily and much more animal influence or like animal products influence. And dairy products also a big thing in the north. So for instance, like paneer, it's it's very popular in the north, right? So that's one big difference. And I guess to an extent, I mean, something that you can oftentimes say with a good degree of caution is that like in general that the people in the north are a bit kind of like more kind of well, the people in the south are more chill. That's what I thought of, but at least from my experience, the people in the south seem to be a more kind of like careless about life, and they do have like all the kind of like festivals and all the kind of like events happening, and the weather of course like allows for that kind of like attitude, right? Whereas in the north it felt like a bit more. It perhaps, I mean, I've been only for a very short time, but it seemed a bit more conservative in terms of also visitors. That's some ideas that I have about it.
I want to ask you about the Indian traffic.
Indian traffic. I mean, coming back to the question about actually the shock. Actually, one of the biggest things was noise. It was just like it's something that I've never experienced anywhere else in the world. That literally I'll be walking on the street and there's always going to be somebody honking or there's going to be somebody, raising your voice, the tone of your voice or this kind of thing. And I think actually like, noise probably was the one thing that like, I can't really say that I had many things that annoyed me, but noise was definitely one thing that. So traffic wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't bad for me because, I mean, within cities to an extent, yes, But traveling between a city to a city, from a state to a state, was super easy. I was super happy with the railways.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I was super happy with them because I think they're efficient. I think they're like, it's an invention of like 100 plus years, but it's still working very well in India. It's impressive, and also you tell me how it feels for local people, but I thought it was like fairly affordable, like still fairly affordable for considering the distances that are being yeah, and the quality was good. I mean, for sure, like the sleeping wagons and all that, I thought that was good. When you're talking about traffic within cities, I thought in Delhi was really nice because there's still the subway, and in Mumbai they have the in-city trains, which also work really nice.
Yeah.
But I thought like the worst place in the world to be for when it comes to traffic was Bangalore.
You said it.
Yeah. It's I like it was just taking hours, to go from one point to another place, because there's like a big of migration of people moving to Bangalore because of becoming a IT capital of India, or like a center. And also they didn't have the subway at that point. Yeah, but I do think that in general I was impressed. Like, sometimes I met a lot of people staying at people's places. I was doing couch surfing, so I got to meet some local people and to an extent see the city through their eyes. And sometimes they'll take me on their scooters, around town. I was just impressed because sometimes you have like, sometimes there'll be an intersection which is like blocked, and there'll be a cow on my left side, and there'll be like a guy on a bicycle who's transporting like gas bubbles, and it was just like, there'll be a car, and it was just like, in a sense, was like, it looked like a mess, but also it's beautiful that people are actually listening to each other and like, kind of like negotiating all the time, like who's gonna pass.
Exactly. All those honking, they are communicating and negotiating. Hey, I have to go first. That's
Right.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing is, someone compared the Indian traffic with the American traffic. In America, if it's the traffic, it's going to be dead slow. I mean, no vehicles will be moving. But in India, we have heavy traffic, but people are still moving.
Right. Yeah, they are.
They make it somehow. Maybe it's through the payments. They take the bike or take chance in the small side roads, and they have their own intelligent solutions. So
it's true. It's true. People find ways for sure. Like, when people are in a hurry, they find ways. I remember there's sometimes people riding their motorbikes on the pavement, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So like you just have to be careful with, like, being aware of it.
Yeah. When I try to go for meetings, when I take a taxi, and I saw that I could be able to make it because of the traffic, and I switched to a tuk-tuk, and I tell him that I need to go to this place and it's really urgent. Can you help me? The tuk-tuk, he'll take me all the small by roads, and it's like a real James Bond movie adventure. But trust me, you'll be there on time.
Okay, yeah, I trust you. I think that's another feature of India, that people in general are flexible.
Yeah, that's true.
It's that feature of being, say, everything being negotiable. Like, so you can always find ways to make it work. So yeah, people tend to be much more like willing to find a creative solution, as opposed to other countries which are based primarily on laws that kind of like you can't just break. You have to follow it no matter what. If there's like a tsunami, you still have to stay on that traffic light. Some countries. Yeah.
Everything is negotiable in India, so that's a good title for a book.
Yeah. That's true.
So, what are the most interesting cultural aspects you liked about India?
I think there's the fact that you have so many religions, like within the one land, and not necessarily even like concentrated in one part of the country, but also kind of like distributed here and there. Like you do have like representatives of like in different cultures and religions in different parts. It's actually beautiful because you do see different ways of living. For instance, I remember at some Sikh temples that they would be cooking and they would be offering food to the poor people, like on a daily basis. Like for lunch, I remember lunch. I don't remember they were offering dinner, but I do remember that coming together. Like one of my friends took me there just to kind of experience this happening, and I do remember that like people just like sit in this big temple and they'll be eating like I think like a 2 or 3, like probably like 1 course dish, but also with dessert. So yeah, 2 course. And I think that's very special, like, putting people together and not even ask. I mean, they weren't asking if you're Sikh or like if you're Christian or Muslim. They were just, give to everyone. Whoever wanted to come and eat. So I think this kind of like aspect of generosity that exists in India in different spheres is something which is very beautiful, like that I really liked.
Yeah. Is there any cultural aspect you can relate to the Bulgarian culture?
Oh, that's again a good question. I think in general, the fact that I think also in Bulgaria, it's like to an extent it's more flexible. People are tending to kind of to find creative solutions in the moment. If you, yeah, for instance, if you're in a hurry, or like or if you, or if like somebody's stolen your wallet, for instance, like and you ask somebody like for a few, for a few bucks, so you can buy yourself a ticket and go back home. This is something that people tend to be like, well, kind of like sympathize with you. So I think that's something that people can do. I remember one time when I was in Japan, in Tokyo, and I was for a few weeks, and at the end I found out actually that I ran out of cash, and my bank card was blocked because for like security reasons they didn't allow me to withdraw money from the ATM because they thought it might be a scam and this kind of thing. So I didn't have money to go back, to take the subway and go back to the airport.
Okay.
And I was asking people, I was explaining my situation to Japanese people on the spot. And I do remember that I asked like, a few dozen people, and all of them said like, they just passed me. They said like, no, like, you cannot give me money.
And none of these Japanese are helping you when you.
Nobody gave me money.
Oh.
Yeah, nobody gave me. It wasn't a lot. It was like about a few dollars that I had to gather. I was missing. That's definitely one side of people being more kind of like people in Bulgaria also, like, in depending on, not in big cities, but in like smaller places, people would invite you. Like if they know you're a foreigner, they'll invite you back home and they'll like offer you some tea and food, or maybe even to stay at your place. So I think that's also like another feature that you don't really find. For instance, that will never happen in the West that easily.
Yeah. So which places in India you liked the most, and that you would like to go again?
I think so. I started my trip in India in the capital city, New Delhi, and then I moved to. I went to Rajasthan. I went to Gujarat, Maharashtra, then Karnataka, Kerala, Tamil Nadu. Then I went to Uttar Pradesh, Uttarakhand, and then I came back to the capital city. I think I had a great time in Kerala. I mean, not because, well, we're having this going here in Kerala right now, but I did really enjoy like the seaside. I did really enjoy the food, and I also enjoy a place called Munnar. I think that's Munnar. Yeah. So the mountains, that side was it was very clean and very beautiful. The food was good, and a lot of beautiful sightseeing. So that's one of my favorite places in India. But having said that, also I was in Varanasi, and well, the cultural side of Varanasi is undoubtedly very interesting. Like in a spiritual way, that's another spot which was just like just thrilling. Walking around any time of the day, you can see something that is just like provoking and like in different ways. That was something very beautiful. Also in Rishikesh, I was like for a few days. I think it's an interesting place because it's close to where Ganga or Ganges, comes from. And it was quite a surprise because obviously in Varanasi the water it's already quite polluted, and then when I went up the stream, I just realized that actually it can be clean, right? Like, closer to the source, it is very clean. So it's almost like a different river.
Yeah.
And the nature in that part was stunning. The Himalayas, it was like kind of like in the foothills of the Himalayas, and that was extremely beautiful. I took myself a scooter and I was just traveling around like
it's a great experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is beautiful. Yeah, it's really beautiful. Like one story from Varanasi I have is that, like, for instance, it will never happen in Copenhagen. Is I went to a barber. I wanted him to, well, kind of like, trim my mustache and beard. And I was like in a very like improvised kind of setting. It was just like it was on the street, and it was almost like a small, it was almost like a small shelter, or like, yeah, like a shelter where like he was, people were like, he was cutting and, yeah, trimming people.
Okay.
So I had the mirror in front of me, and I was looking at it, and then, beneath that you had this small sill where he was keeping the foam and the water and the blades, the razors. And I do remember, like, he started like, trimming my mustache, and at some point, just in front of me in that sill, a mouse came, right?
Okay.
And I was like, that was like that distance from me, that's like, like about, it's like half a meter for me. And then I said, like, I didn't get scared, but the guy didn't get scared either. So I said to the guy, like, hey, look, there's a mouse in front of you, and he said, yeah, there's a mouse. And then, like, so I mean, I got the idea. It's like, it happens all the time, and that's something that was like, yeah, it was fun.
Now let's talk about 2020, a year, a lot of dramas, a lot of, it's like a fantasy year,
Right.
lockdowns, COVID-19, restrictions. So what is your take on that?
I think it's been complicated for on different levels, right? Like, you start from countries and their budgets, their spendings, and of course earnings, revenue, and then you go through companies on a private level, and then you go through, families, friendships,
Yeah.
the personal level as well, like, how people feel like isolating themselves. I mean, personally, for me, it hasn't been that heavy. It hasn't been. I mean, I stopped with, or like, kind of like put my project on hold before the crisis hit, before the pandemic hit. So it didn't really affect me extremely well. But of course, it is affecting me in the sense that it is affecting other people around me, and that's still kind of like, passing some energy onto me, right? And I can see that it's affecting. I can speak about Denmark and Bulgaria in specific, and I can see that it's affecting the countries. But having said that, I still feel that, countries like, for instance, like Denmark, it's doing fairly okay because it's not based heavily on production.
Yeah.
So a lot of people work from home. They're working in design, or they're working within, say, e-commerce, or fields that they can very easily do their work from home.
Yeah.
So Denmark is not affected by the COVID challenge that much, as much as other countries around us. Like, also Bulgaria is quite affected. I think India is quite affected. It's a producing country, and yeah, I do think that there's a lot of say, fog around the pandemic. We don't know how long it's gonna go. We don't know how the vaccines are gonna affect the rate of protection, or like how much people are going to be protected by the vaccines, considering that there's new strains coming. So there's quite a few question marks for 2021 as well. It's been a tough year for the world in general, but there's also quite a few question marks.
That's true. Yeah. You are a solo traveler. So how do
Yeah.
you mentally prepare, and what are the things you do?
I mean, for instance, let's take India, for example. I knew that I'm going to encounter a very different culture in different senses. So I did a lot of research on my own in fields that I was interested in the research field, like collecting the data from this organization that I was interested. I did my research on, like, how transport works, which is like a main point in organizing a trip. I did my research on food, and how food is, what kind of food there is, how it's being prepared, what it's like, is there like a chance that I get a daily belly, for instance,
Yeah.
or not, and what happens if I get it. So I was also, in that sense, I was like, also preparing, like, getting some, the appropriate medication for that, like, say, well, yeah. But also, obviously, I do have, like, some friends from, these countries, and in this case in India, I had a few Indian friends, so I got in touch with them. We had a Skype call, just like I have with you right now, and I asked him all these kind of, like, questions about, like, things that I was concerned about.
Yeah.
And then they explain how it goes and like what happens if this happens, or kind of like giving me some solutions to pre-solutions to or problems that I may encounter.
Yeah.
And that was an invaluable data, because no tourist guide can or no leaflet about the country can really get me
Exactly.
ready for that. Yeah, it's very kind of like very like individual kind of like what do you say, consultancy
Yep.
going
Yep.
taking place. Yeah,
Sure.
I think that's something that that was the main thing, actually, talking to people from India, getting some feedback, asking questions in some groups like forums, what did people experience, and like just getting all these perspectives, getting the perspective of the Indians, but also getting the perspective of other foreigners who've been traveling to India.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's
So, what are your future plans and projects in mind?
future plans. I mean, at the moment, I'm getting ready for. I'm planning to actually. I'm doing some courses in relation to social sciences research methods. So
Okay.
I'm planning to go a bit deeper into that, and apply for some PhD programs in Denmark and also Sweden. And
Oh.
I'm looking a bit more like into like a bit of academic twist
Yeah. Yeah.
to,
That's
to,
true.
to my to my life right now. So that's something that's it's quite interesting for me, like investigating this kind of processes of communities, especially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent. Is there anything you would like to share before we close?
Um, I mean, I'll do like when you ask me, like there's some stories that I still have probably about India that I didn't
Yeah.
really tell yet. Um, but if one is getting ready to visit India, it definitely makes sense to kind of do the research
Yeah.
and then leave that research aside and kind of like keep it as a outline, as a very basic outline, but not necessarily not take anything as being set in stone. Everything is being very like in flow in India. Everything can happen at any point, and just have to be open about it. For instance, I spent 2 weeks in New Delhi.
Hmm.
That was like in between. That was about mid-December,
Yeah.
2016.
Okay.
And then I decided to take a train trip to Rajasthan, to Jodhpur.
Yeah.
And it was a night train. I booked it was my first train trip. And it was a sleeping wagon, right?
Yeah.
So something that they didn't consider is that this train is going to pass through the desert, which at night in this season is extremely cold,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? And we did pass with the train, and actually realized that we cannot close the window, so there's wind coming all the time during that night. So
Yeah.
me and the other people, like the Indians in that we were sharing that wagon, we couldn't fall asleep all night. And I remember that once I got to Jodhpur in the morning, I felt really kind of like weird, like it's in kind of like weak, and I
Hmm.
thought probably that's because of the lack of sleep. But then I realized after that, actually, like for the next few days, I felt like worse and worse, and kind of like had to stay for a few days in bed in the hostel. And after that, I was the hostel manager, or the owner of the hostel, said like listen, you're not getting better, like you're losing a lot of weight, and you need to go to the hospital.
Hmm.
And I went to a hospital, to a state-owned hospital, and at that point, actually, it's well, I stayed for like I think 2 nights, but it was impressive because there's no food at that hospital, like provided by the hospital.
Oh.
But yeah, but I mean that's okay. But I mean it's just the way it is. But actually, when I asked the doctors, where can I go and find food, they said like, don't worry, we're gonna go and buy food for you. Just let us know what you want. And then I told him like, how about you buy me like, this kind of these fruits and this, like whatever it was, some kind of stew or curry, like aloo palak, for instance.
Mhm.
And then like 1 hour later, they came with the food.
Oh.
Yeah, and I was like, I asked them like, okay, how much do I owe you for the food? And they said like, don't worry, like, it's from us. So I do
Yeah.
remember this kind of like extreme act of generosity from people, which was something that I would never expect anywhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the reason why, because there is a Sanskrit saying, "Aditi Devo Bhava," which means for us, guests are like gods.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the cultural value India have. So they see guests like God.
Right.
So that's the reason why. Yeah.
I think I did experience that personally. Like, you know, it was an experiential way of understanding that, going through it, and it was beautiful. I mean, in a sense, it was like, yeah, it was very touching. You know, to see that somebody like cares in such a way, like where people can be so nice, even though these people might be, well, you know, they're spending some resource. You know, they need time to, like, you know, treat patients, or maybe they went to take the food while they had a break. So, you know, it's still very impressive that they did that. They took from their own time to do that. So I think that's something like, yeah, probably it's a good note to end on. But that's something to remember India with good stuff,
Yeah.
with good
Yeah.
experiences. Yeah.
So it was a really nice session with you, Plamen. I
Thank you.
really enjoyed. And I'm sure the audience will love most of the points you said. Thank you very much for your time. And maybe we will catch up again after some point of time
Of
in the
course,
future and see how
of
things are
course.
going.
Of course, thank you, Jinu. Thanks for inviting.
Thanks.
It's a nice experience being asked to reflect on these things, kind of like revisit these things and think of it again, and maybe
Yeah,
see new sides to these stories as well.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you very
So we
much.
will come again with some back stories of some other country, maybe Denmark or maybe Bulgaria, at some point of time.
Could be. Why not? Looking forward. Yeah.
Okay.